The headlines screamed it. Pope Francis reveals the dark past of Cardinal Tagle. Millions clicked, watched, and shared. But the truth is far more complex than any clickbait title could capture. In November 2022, Pope Francis ousted the entire leadership of Caritas Internationalis, a move that demoted Tagle. What really happened behind Vatican walls? Why was the popular cardinal, once considered a papal contender, suddenly sidelined? And what does this say about the future of the Church? Before we uncover what really happened, tell us in the comments, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about this story? The headlines painted a picture of scandal. Pope Francis reveals dark past of Cardinal Tagle. The Pope made a huge announcement about Cardinal Tagle's secrets. Across YouTube and social media, millions clicked, expecting explosive revelations about one of the Catholic Church's most prominent Asian leaders. But here's the catch. None of it was true. Fact-checkers at Verifiles quickly debunked these claims, revealing that the videos were nothing more than clickbait designed to exploit public curiosity about the Filipino cardinal. The supposed dark past was never actually revealed by Pope Francis. In fact, one of the videos even carried a disclaimer stating its content should not be interpreted as factual information. This is the strange reality of how the Vatican's internal affairs intersect with the modern attention economy, where a misleading headline can generate nearly 1 million views in days. But why would creators invent such a narrative? And what was the real event that triggered this wave of misinformation? The answer lies not in a scandalous expose, but in a dramatic leadership shakeup that actually happened. To understand what really unfolded, we must go back to November 2022, when Pope Francis made a decision that stunned the Catholic world and set off a chain of speculation that continues to this day. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. What viewers around the world didn't realize was that the real story wasn't about a dark past being exposed, it was about a management crisis that forced the Pope's hand. On November 22, 2022, Pope Francis issued a decree that sent shockwaves through the Vatican. He removed the entire leadership of Caritas Internationalis, the Catholic Church's global charity confederation that operates in over 200 countries through 162 member organizations. This wasn't a targeted attack on Cardinal Tagle. The Pope's decision swept away the president, vice presidents, secretary general, treasurer, ecclesiastical assistant, and the executive and representative councils. The most stunning part? Cardinal Tagle himself had to break the news to representatives from around the world who had gathered in Rome for a meeting. According to those present, there was stunned silence, followed by forced applause. The cardinal, who had just announced his own dismissal, read the decree, offered words of discernment, and quietly left the room. So what triggered such a dramatic move? The Vatican's Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development had commissioned an independent review of Caritas Internationalis' workplace environment earlier that year. The findings were damning enough to warrant immediate action. The review uncovered real deficiencies in management and procedures, seriously prejudicing team spirit and staff morale. But here's what the headlines conveniently left out. No evidence of financial mismanagement was found. No sexual impropriety surfaced. The problem was human, a toxic workplace culture that had driven employees away. Current and former staff had reported cases of verbal abuse, favoritism, and general human resources mismanagement. In fact, reports indicate that some employees had already left because of the environment at Caritas Rome headquarters. As the gravity of this decision sank in, a new question emerged. Why was the once celebrated Cardinal of Manila being treated this way? And what would become of his future in the Church? The transition would be unlike anything the Vatican had seen. If this story surprised you, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. To understand why the world reacted so intensely to that November 2022 announcement, you have to appreciate who Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle was before the headlines turned. He wasn't just any Vatican official. He was a phenomenon. Affectionately known by his childhood nickname Chito, Tagle had been widely celebrated as the Asian Francis, a charismatic, joyful figure whose love for the poor and spontaneous warmth mirrored the Pope's own style. He spoke Italian, English, Spanish, and Tagalog, and his theological credentials were impeccable. In the 1990s, he served on the Vatican's International Theological Commission under Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI. When he hosted Pope Francis's 2014 visit to the Philippines, The crowds were unprecedented. An estimated 7 million people attended a single Mass, the largest gathering in papal travel history. By the time he moved to Rome in 2020, Tagle was the face of the Church's missionary arm, heading the powerful dicastery for evangelization. Speculation was rampant. Many cardinals and Vatican watchers viewed him as the natural successor to Francis, a pope from Asia who would carry the pope's vision forward. And then came the Caritas crisis. Suddenly, a man once seen as untouchable was publicly demoted. But the question that lingered in Vatican corridors was not just about management failures, it was about whether this would permanently derail his path to the papacy. But the answer, as observers would soon discover, lay in a strange period of institutional limbo that began even before the Caritas announcement. And it raised an unsettling possibility. Had Tagle already been sidelined, quietly, months before the world ever knew? If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. While the headlines screamed about demotion and scandal, a quieter drama was unfolding behind the scenes, one that left Vatican watchers confused for months. In March 2022, Pope Francis issued a new Vatican constitution called Predicate Evangelium. This reform merged the powerful Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, the department Tagle had been brought to Rome to lead, into a new dicastery for evangelization, with the Pope himself at its head. Tagle was expected to become a pro-prefect of this new body. But for nearly a year after the announcement, the Vatican press office avoided giving him any formal title. He was mentioned without any position at all. Speculation grew that he had fallen out of favor even before the Caritas crisis unfolded. Then, in November 2022, the Caritas bombshell hit. It looked like a 1-2 punch that had permanently sidelined the Cardinal. But the narrative wasn't finished. Just 2 months later, in January 2023, the Vatican finally confirmed what many had assumed all along. Tagle was officially the pro-prefect of the dicastery for evangelization, leading the section responsible for first evangelization and new particular churches. His role in the Church's central mission had actually been preserved. What did this sudden reversal reveal about the Pope's true intentions? And could this seemingly demoted cardinal still hold the keys to the papacy itself? The story of Cardinal Tagle is not one of a destroyed career, but of a complicated path still very much open. While the headlines screamed demotion, the reality, as revealed in the previous chapter, is more nuanced. Despite the management crisis at Caritas, his central role within the Vatican's evangelization efforts was preserved. But that has not silenced the whispers. It has, in fact, only intensified the debate about what his future might hold. And that future is the most tantalizing question of all. Could a demoted cardinal still ascend to the highest office in the Catholic Church? The speculation is not just the stuff of YouTube rumors. In media analysis of potential successors to Pope Francis, Cardinal Tagle's name consistently appears among the frontrunners. He is often touted as a favorite, with some even dubbing him the Asian Francis for his focus on social justice and his charismatic, approachable nature. On paper, he seems to have all the qualifications. He has the pastoral experience, the theological credentials, and a global appeal that could make him the first pope from Asia. However, a permanent shadow now hangs over this promising profile. Critics point to the Caritas Internationalis affair as a serious stain on his management record. The 2022 dismissal, stemming from an investigation into a toxic workplace culture and accusations of bullying, raises questions about his leadership. Some observers believe this could be a fatal blow to his papal ambitions, with cardinals perhaps preferring an older candidate with a less controversial record. The question then becomes, did Pope Francis's decision to save Tagle's position while removing him from a direct leadership role shield him from the worst of the criticism, or does the association with the failed Caritas management permanently disqualify him? The answer remains as unclear as the Vatican's internal workings. As the Church looks ahead, Tagle's story serves as a powerful reminder that in the corridors of power, a fall from grace is not always the end of the story. Sometimes, it's simply a new, uncertain chapter. His future may depend not on a single decision made in 2022, but on how that decision is interpreted by the men who will one day gather in the Sistine Chapel.